We pray for perseverance for all in our community, as we know it is a long road ahead to rebuild the many places we love across the Guadalupe River. For the unsung heroes in our community, that God's Spirit would give them the endurance to do the work that He has given them to do.
That was Kerrville, Texas Youth Minister Wyatt Wintrick at a vigil attended by hundreds of mourners honoring the dead, the missing, and the heroes of Kerrville, Texas. You were looking at a video a short time ago of a search and rescue operation that is underway today. Search and rescue is still continuing. Crews are searching along the Guadalupe River for the 176 people still missing after the devastating July 4th flood. The total death toll at this hour stands at 120. Among those are at least 36 children. 2,100 responders from federal, state, and local agencies are on the ground. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is vowing to continue the search efforts until every person is accounted for. And President Trump is scheduled to go to Camp Mystic tomorrow, the Christian camp that lost at least 26 campers to that vicious flooding. The human toll is immeasurable. It is heartbreaking. AccuWeather estimates the cost of the cleanup and the rebuilding effort for this, $22 billion. Joining me now is a Texas real estate developer and philanthropist who's got a very personal connection to the tragedy in Kerrville, Rastegar Property Company CEO Ari Rastegar. I want to start with the fact that you have a very personal connection to Camp Mystic.
I mean, it's still pretty difficult to even wrap your head around it. And, you know, being from Dallas yourself, you know, where I grew up in the University Park area, Camp Mystic is a staple in the community. And so knowing several people that we grew up with that had children, family, friends, I mean, it's truly just unimaginable. And I look at the one of the systemic issues is floodplains. So as a developer, you know, when we build these large tracts of land, you know, you go through these 100-year floodplain plans, 500-year flood year plans, and I hope the real takeaway from this, aside from the obvious, is the state starts to take a much deeper look at what we once called 100-year or 500-year floodplains that had maybe a 1% chance or a 0.2% chance. Camp Mystic, part of it was in the 500-year floodplain. So I think this is going to create a real dialogue of what is and what isn't a floodplain per se.
I do want to just honor the memory of Hadley Hanna. She's 8 years old. You went to school with her mother. I just want to say that our prayers and thoughts are with her family who've asked for privacy, but also for all of the children that have been lost and the counselors and the tremendous loss of life. It continues to be a heartbreaking story day to day. You mentioned something that I think is crucial is, you know, this was a 100-year flood event that it's unprecedented. But when you look at from a developer standpoint, how do you say to yourself, obviously no one wants to ever see this happen again?
Of course.
And you mentioned that 6 million people in Texas are in flood zones.
Correct.
So how do we safeguard against that? How do we don't want to see this again?
I agree. And I think the thing that we can look at, if we zoom out just a little bit, is, you know, what we had called before. I think this is a great time to start using AI models and using some of these mechanics to figure out, you know, did the variables just change if this was a 100-year or 500-year floodplain episode? And with 6 million people, 6 million Texans that live within these floodplains that are supposed to be 1% or 0.2% probability, I think this really disrupts the model. It's where we need to start thinking about more infrastructure, more safeguards, and reevaluating what we call floodplains in general.
How long do you think it's going to take to rebuild Kerrville, the surrounding areas?
I mean, you're talking right now, I mean, there's over $20 billion of costs that we just see on the front end. We haven't even recovered the bodies yet.
Yeah.
So
years. It's going to be years.
It's going to be it's going to be years, and there's it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of people there that is their home and they're not going anywhere. And once they get through this tragedy, then they've got to look at how to, you know, eventually move forward. Well, you know, we saw something similar with Superstorm Sandy, which was this freak event that took hundreds of innocent lives here in the New York City area. You know, we're looking at a different situation here in New York with our real estate picture. And I know that this is another national story. We just had on Curtis Sliwa, who's running for mayor in the city. But they're trying to do this thing where they want to, Zohar Madani wants to freeze the rent, hit the real estate community, hit the, you know, this hits not just large scale, buildings, but this could be mom and pop rent, landlords. Do you worry when you see a city like New York that could be going down a very dark path with something like this?
I do, and I think there's a few points to look at. One is if you give this rent relief, so to speak, yes, there are millions of people that would have, would be saving a lot of money on the short term. But you can't freeze rents to fix a housing shortage. So what I worry about is if, first of all, you're going to disincentivize developers, because if you can't raise rents at least enough to meet the inflationary limits of 2%, which is apparently the Fed chair's limit, developers aren't going to build. And then the other problem is if developers can't raise rents, you're going to have a big deferred maintenance plan, meaning landlords might not be upkeeping the building as well because they don't have enough of the finances to be able to fix the plumbing and the mechanics. So you wake up 5 years from now with an affordability issue, less housing, and a higher affordability issue. So it's like, finding a very, very short-sighted temporary solution, maybe to win a mayoral race, and not addressing the larger problem for New York, which is over 500,000 units that are desperately needed. So you're going to shoot the developers in the foot to fix a problem that doesn't fix it?
I know we have to go, but all right, these are the policies, whether it's New York or California, that have driven people out of these cities, and in particular the Californians that have headed to Dallas. You mentioned University Park. I mean, that area has exploded with people from California who said that they had to get out of California, and they chose Texas. And it is a great state, and we both love our state, and I'm so glad that you were here today, Ari. And we're going to be following everything down there very closely. Ari Rastegar,
Thank you so
great
much.
to see you again.
You too.